I got three big little things the Jaguars should do to make this offseason even better. I'll tell you about it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you and welcome to another edition of Locked On Jaguars. I am your host, the Daily Jaguars podcast called Locked On Jaguars. I am Tony Wiggins. Been covering this team for a good little while now, maybe about 13 and a half, 14 years. So now I get to give it to you here every day because it's your team every day. And we thank you for making us your first listen. As a reminder, we're also free on all platforms, anywhere you get your podcast. We're right there and you don't have to pay for it. Make sure you also tap in and subscribe to the YouTube page as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. If you ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your own football franchise, then this game is definitely for you. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. Our listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo Locked On. One word, all caps, Locked On. What is going on, man? It's a beautiful day outside here in North Florida. Of course, we are now in the phase where we are waiting to hear if Calvin Ridley will apply today for reinstatement back to the National Football League and how that's going to go. Everyone expects him to actually be reinstated. And folks are now starting to put it in their mind together about what they need to do or what the Jaguars need to do in order to get some salary cap space, be ready for free agency, and go into the season with the draft. And rightfully so. All big things, all huge things that need to be addressed, how this team's going to improve, even though we're really happy with the way the progress of Doug Peterson, progress of Trevor Lawrence, and the way the season actually unfolded for the Jaguars. We know that there's another level. And that last step is really, really hard. Those last couple of steps are hard. I'm almost wondering if the last two steps from, say, losing in the divisional to winning a divisional, winning in the AFC Championship game, and then getting to the Super Bowl, because getting there to me is where you got to get there in order to win it. So those steps that I call two steps, from going from where they are now to actually winning the game and then winning the following game and then having a chance to go to the Super Bowl, I'm thinking that those two steps by themselves might be bigger than the step that the Jaguars actually made this year from worst to first in the AFC South, worst in the league, to AFC South champions, to winner of a playoff game. As hard as that was to do, this next step might be harder, these next ones. So I think it's going to take some big things and the things that folks are actually concentrating on right now. I also think it's going to take some little things, and that's what I'm here to talk about today. I've thought about three little things that I believe the Jaguars need to do to help this team. I'm not going to sit here and tease you to death about them. I'm going to tell you what it is and what they are, and then I'm going to tell you when we're going to talk about them. We're going to talk about the first one in segment 1 and 2. I think they need to consider bringing home Calais Campbell. That's what we're going to talk about for the first segment, and maybe the first segment and a half. Segment 2, I'm going to bring up the fact that this team needs a true backup quarterback at this point. If we're talking about them contending, they don't need a clipboard holder that they're trying to develop. I think they need a guy who has proven that he's won some games, just in case you lose Trevor for a week or two with some sort of concussion protocol or high ankle or something like that. I think you need to put yourself in a position to you at least need somebody who can hold the fort down for you and win some games, and who's played in the National Football League, no longer just taking a 6th-round pick or taking a no name from another team. No, you need to. There are plenty of veteran starters out there, and I'm going to go through that in segment 2. And finally, I think the Jags need a veteran running back, a big running back, especially after watching the playoffs when you watch that, as good as Pacheco was for Kansas City, there right at the end, Jerick McKinnon made a huge play and he was making plays all game. And then for the Eagles, Miles Sanders wasn't on his game. They were able to go to Kenneth Gainwell. That doesn't mean I don't believe Travis Etienne will ever be off his game. It just means you need more than one running back to win in the NFL. So let's get to the Calais Campbell issue. He still has some stuff left in the tank. I think now he'll admit that he doesn't have as much as he had when he left Jacksonville, and the demand probably won't be as high for him. He wants to win a Super Bowl championship. Make no mistake about it, Calais Campbell is going to a team or will stay with the team, maybe in Baltimore, if they keep Lamar Jackson. He's going to be on one of these teams that has one of these dynamic quarterbacks, and the Jaguars have one. So why not bring him back to a place that's very familiar? And what sort of role would he have? Everyone thinks that the first thing I'm thinking about is mentorship. That's a given when it comes to Calais. That's not the first thing I think about. I think about the fact that there are times when they need to get people off the field on third down, and if you give him a limited amount of snaps, he'll be able to help you do that. He's still Calais Campbell. He's still 6'8". He's still hanging around 300 pounds. He moves well. I don't think he's the every down, all-day guy he used to be, and that's expected and understandable. But he could be a very, very valuable piece against the run and against the pass for the Jaguars this year. In fact, he may be good enough that when you start allocating those funds, a couple of the guys that you had this year that you may have to think about whether you want to keep them or not, I put their money together, the money that they were paid last year, and if it equals about $5 million a year, I'd ask Calais to sign a 2-year deal. That's what I do. A 2-year, $10 million deal, and I'd fully guarantee it. And I say, hey, I want you to come in here. I want you to establish the work ethic. I want you to make plays for us on third down. I want you to make plays for us in the red zone. I want you to make sure everybody's where they're supposed to be. And then I want you to teach these guys how to further prepare themselves. And after practice every day, I want you to work with these edge rushers, Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker, and I want you to show them how to disengage. I want you to ride them, and I want you to be on them. And I think it'd be a great role for him. I also believe that he'd be good for Jacksonville just on his own merits without what he'll teach other players. I just think he's the perfect guy, especially from the sense that he's been here before. They call him the mayor of Saxonville. I think it'd be a good homecoming. And this is not just me trying to do something emotional, but if I had my druthers, you're going to have to spend $10 to $15 million on somebody else. And the guys that we've mentioned Hargrove, we've mentioned Deron Payne. Deron Payne might cost you $17 million. Can getting Calais Campbell fit in with the other two that you already have in Devon Hamilton as well as Fadukasi? When you have those two and you have Calais, does that work out better for you than signing someone to an incredible amount of money? Yeah, because now it still leaves room for you to draft a young player. Maybe you can get in that third round, and if Keanu Benton is sitting there, you can still get another big person. You can't have too many big people. The Eagles had 5 of them, and they couldn't stop the run in the Super Bowl. So you can't have too many. So the first thing I would propose is Calais Campbell and his return back to Jacksonville. I want to discuss that a little bit more, and then I want to talk about why I feel is imperative to also get a little bit more of a proven quarterback, more of a proven commodity, as opposed to having the type of backups that the Jaguars have had. I think it's extremely important that they start acting like a team that is expected to win big. And when you're expected to win big, you even need a real good backup, right? Right. I know the 2 teams in the Super Bowl had backup quarterbacks that had extensive playing time just in case something happens. We'll discuss that and more in just a few seconds here on Locked On Jaguars. I have to let you know that today's sponsor, the sponsor for today's show, is the Ultimate Football GM. That's right. It's a wonderful game, man. I've been playing it as I've been traveling, and it gives me a chance to see how difficult it is to be a GM and make all the decisions while I'm sitting there talking about it every day. It's your turn to compete. But more than later, have you ever dreamed like I have of being an NFL GM? If that's the case, you'll manage every aspect of your team, play through seasons, and lead your team to the glory and build yourself a dynasty. Hiring the right coaches and coordinators, trading players, navigating your franchise through free agency and the draft, and all that is all on you. You can even name your coach Doug Peterson if that's what you want to do, and hopefully that brings you some luck. Locked On Jaguars listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo Locked On, all caps, in the game store. That's Locked On, all caps, so make sure you check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the App Store. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. And you start your day right here with me and us here on Locked On Jaguars. We're eternally grateful that you make us your first listen. Any new listeners out there, you ain't new once you come in. As soon as you come in for the very first time, you can kick your shoes off, man, and go in the refrigerator and fix your sandwich. You are just as welcome as anyone. Just make sure that you feel at home, because that's the way we want you to do it here, and we make you our first listen. Calais Campbell coming back. Leadership, it adds a lot. I think it adds trust, another layer of trust that the players have. And then I think he can just still play. I don't think you're going to get 40 snaps and him be effective, but I do think you can get 25 and he can be super, super effective, especially in critical situations for the Jaguars. And then he's just a guy who knows he's played multiple. He started out in Arizona playing the 5 technique in a 3-4. He came here and he played the 4B position here with the Jaguars at the big end position. Then he even slid inside, did some 3 technique. He's doing all kinds of stuff in Baltimore. So he is just a guy who, because of his character, because of how he's maintained his conditioning and kept himself in shape, I just think he's a real good individual at this stage of his career to have in that locker room. And it's somebody I give about $5 million, $5 or $6 million a year to come in here and do the things that I'm paying 2 other guys to do that I don't think they do it as well as he did. So that's one thing we'll talk about. The other thing I said we bring up was a backup quarterback, a true backup quarterback. Now, right now, I'm thinking like a guy like Jameis Winston, right? I'm thinking about a guy like Sam Darnold. The reason why I think it's imperative that you get someone like that is because I think that now you have to find a player like that that understands that his opportunities to start around the league have diminished a little bit, but that he still has some value, and folks will still at least fear him for a game or two if your quarterback goes down. You don't want to take a team now that you're now building to compete for a championship, not just to get relevance or to gain relevance like we have been. But once you're trying to compete for a championship, you just don't want the vulnerability of knowing that if your quarterback goes down. Now, most of the time, anytime your quarterback goes down, it's going to be a big, serious problem. So that's not a news flash to anyone. But what I'm talking about is that your quarterback goes down and it's short term, but those short-term games that he misses can be very, very costly. Just think about it this year. The Jaguars made the playoffs on the last regular season game of the year. If they had to play 3 or 4 games last year with C.J. Beathard, would that have happened? If they had to play 3 or 4 games last year with someone who's a little bit better than that, what do you think would have happened? Taylor Heineke, a guy like that, just someone. Ask San Francisco how important it is to have guys on your roster that's been able to play a little bit. Now they got away with it because they had Josh Purdy, who's a really good player for them. But then as soon as he got hurt, it was just too much. You pressed his depth a little bit too much. Now had they had somebody who's a little bit more competent, they might have had a little bit more of a showing. So now what this will signal to me, though, is that the Jaguars, it'll signal a turn in their thinking. And what I mean by a turn in their thinking is that they're no longer a team that's just going to say, okay, we are going to use that backup quarterback position as just a guy who's really good to be around, who's good for the starter. And it's just going to be a situation where we hope he never has to play. Or maybe we can develop him a little bit and in a couple of years, get a draft pick for. I don't want what they had before with Gardner Minshew. I want a proven NFL veteran. And if you look around the league, I believe at any team that is a contender or a championship caliber team, there's somebody at that position that at least has started some games at other places who can help them in a pinch. And I think the Jaguars need to probably look in that route and get someone who's a little bit more high, more known, and has a little bit more higher usage rate as a starter in the league. It'll signal to me that they understand and they get that they've changed and they've moved into a different direction. Because not all teams do the same. You don't do the same things when you're not a contender type team. Or if like the Jaguars the last 2 years, they didn't need like a Jameis Winston backup or a Sam Darnold backup because they were going to focus all of their attention on Trevor Lawrence, one. The other thing was the team around Trevor wasn't really good enough until this season. They weren't really good enough that you had to be concerned about, well, if he goes down for a couple of weeks, do we have somebody who could at least just hold things down and batten down the hatches and hold things down until he gets back? No, they weren't good enough. They didn't go to they had Trevor for a year and had the first pick again. But now that you've gotten better, I think you need more proven depth. And I think it's the time that you have to do it. All right, so we're going to hit segment 3, and I'm going to talk about a big veteran running back. When I say veteran, I don't mean antique. I don't mean someone who is long in the tooth and old and slow, but I do mean somebody. I need somebody, and I'll mention a couple of names from some people. Guys that that have a tremendous amount of value, that are good in short yardage, that are good in pass pro, that can go out and catch the ball, that can give you 45, 50, 60 yards a game if that's what you need to, if you're going run heavy. I'll talk about all of that stuff here in just a second on Locked On Jaguars. I thought I'd let you guys know about today's sponsor. That is FanDuel. Man, I am so glad and so proud to have this podcast and this network associated with FanDuel, because FanDuel and I have been buddies for a long time. We have been going at it, and I'm finally glad to have them along as a sponsor because they're the number one sports book in America. They're the best in all of sports. I'm telling you right now, it's off the chain. And look, NFL is over, but the midway of the NBA season is here now, and it's the perfect time to download FanDuel because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's right. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. All right? It's very, very easy. All you have to do is go, sign up, look on. They give you all the information, and they tell you everything you need to know in order to make an informed decision on how you want to move. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/locked-on. That's FanDuel.com/locked-on to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. And I thank you once again for making me your official partner here on Locked On Jaguars and making us your first listen. We are always grateful to have you here every day. Without you, there's no us. Make sure you like and subscribe on the YouTube page as well. And wherever you get your podcast, we are absolutely free. So going down my list of things here. And here's the last thing of the 3 little things. I call them the 3 big little things the Jaguars, I hope that they do as we get ready to approach free agency. Find a big veteran running back. Pay a little bit of money for him. And I know folks are saying that's not really a priority because Travis Etienne is going to get most of the starts. And we just don't need to be doing all of that at this point. I got to wipe my forehead a little bit. I took some cold medicine. We don't need to be using up all of that, all of those resources and all of that money on a guy who's going to be a backup. Okay, you can draft one. So what I'm really trying to do here is I'm trying to save the draft picks for other positions. And I want to use the running back position where I do go out and get a veteran because a veteran at running back doesn't cost as much as, say, a veteran at corner. Doesn't cost as much as a veteran on the offensive line, I believe. It doesn't cost as much as a veteran tight end or a veteran edge rusher. I believe, for instance, Arden Key made like what, $4.5 to $5 million last year, and he was their third edge, right? Their third edge. And if you want to think about DeJuan Smoot as an edge before he got hurt, it was like 3A and 3B. You ain't paying the guy I'm talking about at running back, you ain't paying him $4 million a year. You might pay him $3 million a year, or you might be able to structure the contract a certain way so that the average works out, that he's okay. But there are a couple of guys I'm talking about. One is Samaj P. Ryan. Samaj P. Ryan is a backup, big physical dude, knows how to block, can catch, can do all the things you need to do to win games. You notice I keep mentioning what I'm looking for are guys who can do the things that's required for us to win football games, right? Or that Williams kid up at Detroit, who led the league in rushing touchdowns. We might have got priced out of that though. And I think they love him so much in Detroit, they're going to bring him back. But we possibly will be priced out of his range, and that's simply because of the type of year he's had up there, and he scored those touchdowns, and he's really a part of the identity of the Detroit Lions football team. But you get my point. It's guys sort of like that, right? And Travis Etienne didn't play a lot down the stretch. In the biggest game of the year, people were like, Jamal Williams is his name, by the way, but folks are like, why is Michael Hasty in the game? I still have never gotten an answer whether or not it was because of pass protection or it was because of some sort of injury. I felt at some point that they were saving Etienne for the end of the game. Etienne wasn't in the game when Jamal Agnew caught the pass and dropped it and fumbled. And you think Etienne is one of the best players on the team, and you want him to have his hands on the ball at all times. I understand it. I get it. I don't know why he didn't play as much. I haven't had the answer, so it's only speculation. He played a lot, but it was a critical moments in the game where you want to see that guy on the field. Well, if you're not going to have him on the field, you know who you want to see? You want to see a veteran you trust, like one of the guys I just mentioned. So I think to get out of that situation where you're sitting, Deontay Foreman would be a good dude. I think he's probably getting freed up in Carolina. He'd be another one I'd look at. So I'm trying to get a bunch of things in one player. I want more size on the goal line, more physicality, good at pass protection, veteran who understands that Travis Etienne is going to touch the ball 15 to 20 times a game, whether it's in the run or the pass, and who will be selfless, who's ready to ride this wave. It's easier to get guys like the people I just talked about to ride this wave because you have Doug Peterson and you have Trevor Lawrence, and it appears that the Jaguars are on the precipice of doing something very, very special here over the next couple of years and competing. Hell, I take like the same way the Chargers took Jerick McKinnon. That's the perfect dude. Guy who's played a lot of football, done a lot of things. What about if we get into the playoffs and Trevor missed a couple of drives the way Patrick Mahomes did against the Jaguars? And they had Chad Henne. Yep, check down Chad, who we all know. They had Chad Henne, but he's still a dude who's thrown a lot of balls, who wasn't afraid of the moment. It's because he's a veteran and he's older. So those are the things that I think the Jaguars, three big little things that I think can do. Just to recap, I would sign Calais Campbell and make the mayor of Jacksonville and his return something of a thing this offseason. I get a true backup quarterback, someone who's played a lot in the league already, who may understand that he's now a backup for a reason, but who can still get it done if you need him in short spurts. And the last thing, a big veteran running back who can help in all phases of the running game and give them the type of depth that won't have you questioning why your best players aren't in the game. We're going to keep doing stuff like this, man, as we lead up to the draft and free agency. And at some point, I'm going to do my positional list and tell you the 7 or 8 best guys at each position. I won't go too super deep with it because I know you get bored after a while. The 7 or 8 guys at each position, and then I'll discuss the guys that I think are the best fits with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Thank you again for joining us and making us your first listen here on Locked On Jaguars. As I always say, please take care of each other, and we'll see you next time here on Locked On Jaguars.